Okay. So, all right. I see Robin and Mika. Oh, there you. Okay, there you.
Oh,
Okay. Uh, Yes. Make host. Okay. You made host now.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
hi.
How are you doing, Mika?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. You're not joining us this year, huh?
Well, you're in Vegas, so I don't know that I can keep down to Vegas. I can't do what I did last year and drive down. I got a 10-month-old now, so I don't know
Yeah,
that I can, I
yeah.
can pull that off.
No, no, you need to stay home. How you doing, Barry?
Yes.
You muted. You muted. You muted.
Okay, how about now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. How are you doing?
Good, good, good.
Yeah, yeah. It's been a minute since we talked.
That's right. It's been a minute.
Yeah.
Glad you're able
Well, yeah. Yeah, sorry about the invite. Glad that you invited me to this. It's
Yeah.
much needed discussion.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. It's Robin. Good evening.
Hello,
Thank
Robin.
Hey, Robin.
you. Right.
All right. Well, I'm gonna shut myself out and become a listener.
So, I think we'll start promptly around 6:10.
Okay.
Good. I'm gonna grab something to cover my head because it's just my hair's going crazy. So give me 1 second. I'll be right back.
Amal.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, did you have any difficulty accessing the material, the content?
No, it was fun. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think we'll go ahead and start an introduction
Okay.
for our speakers today. Thank you everybody for being here tonight. We're looking forward to having a really productive conversation. For our speakers today, we have Mika Brown, Dr. Robin Albany, and Barry Gregory. I will be moderating today's event. So Mika Brown, to give an introduction, was born and raised in the Roxbury section of Boston. Mika Brown pursued a career in the music industry before founding an all-natural body care company named after her great-grandmother. After her sister-in-law's death from cervical cancer, Mika became interested in cannabis and began studying herbalism and cannabis science. She eventually left her family's constable business to enter the cannabis industry, starting as a bud tender and quickly rising to become the general manager of 2 dispensaries. Currently, Mika works as a cannabis banking regulatory specialist, overseeing compliance and regulations for a fintech software company. She is committed to creating space for minorities and disadvantaged classes in the industry and developing safe, healthy cannabis and herbal medicine. Mika also hopes to educate elders and seniors about the benefits of cannabis and to destigmatize the plant as a viable solution for their health needs. We have Dr. Robin Albany, who is an experienced advanced practice registered nurse who holds certifications as an adult family and psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. She is dedicated to community health advocacy and works as an independent patient advocate to provide people with the information they need. Driven by her passion for wellness and advocacy for all, she facilitates collaborative partnerships between patients and providers by fostering empowerment and agency. Dr. Albany holds several degrees, including a Doctor of Nursing Practice from Monmouth University, an MBA in Health Administration from Eastern University, and a Bachelor of Science in Nursing from Thomas Jefferson University. She is a member of several nursing associations and has served on advisory boards and community service positions, including the Dia de la Mujer Latinas Advisory Board and Vice President of Caring Hearts Organization. We have Barry Gregory, who has a master's degree in business administration and a bachelor's degree in liberal arts. Barry has over 15 years experience with federal and state government in the areas of grants and contract administration. He has also served in community development activities and has worked with at-risk groups in schools and prisons, and he considers himself an agent for change. Thank you everybody for being here tonight. We're really looking forward to having the conversation today. So to sort of go over our discussion prompts, we will be going over how the criminalization of cannabis disproportionately has impacted the Black community in terms of incarceration rates and its long-term impacts on employment, education, and healthcare. And we also want to address social equity and economic opportunities for the Black community while also considering the historical context of cannabis criminalization and how the lack of representation and diversity within the cannabis industry can help perpetuate racial disparities, and also looking at the role that Black cooperatives play in that. So, Mika, I'm going to start the conversation over with you. How do you think the criminalization of cannabis impacts the Black community and its long-term impacts that it has on employment, on education, and healthcare, particularly?
So as we know, we live in a society that, we have the most incarcerated people in America. And we know that that number is disproportionate to people of color, particularly Black males. Cannabis was used specifically as a tool to incarcerate people of color in areas disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. So how the direct impact to the Black community is a loss of leadership of Black males in our community. It's a decimated community. It's also folks when they are released from prison, they go to jail from felony charges. So that means you lose your right to vote. You lose the ability to live in assisted housing. By assisted housing, I mean federal. You can't get a federal grant or subsidy to live in housing. You can't apply for financial aid to go to college. And so all of those things make it extremely difficult for Black men, people of color to reintegrate back into society because of this use of cannabis as a tool. I think we've seen the long-term consequences in our community. We don't have generational wealth. Here in Massachusetts, where the median income is well into the six figures, the median income in Boston, particularly in its neighborhoods that are more proportionate to people of color, that number is $8. So, you know, there was a study done on wealth in the city of Boston, and that was what they found, that $8 was the, you know, the wealth that was accumulated on average between peoples of color. So I don't think I need to speak any further. That is a huge, huge disparity. Six figures for everybody else and $8. And I believe that that is due to long-term rates of high incarceration, families being disrupted, children, you know, with growing up in single parent homes, the anxiety that's created because of that. It's one of the things that I saw as a City of Boston constable also is, you know, if you use cannabis in your home and you live in a federally subsidized property or building, and you are kicked out because of that, you lose your home, you lose your access to a subsidy, you go through that cycle. So these are some of the long-term issues. Specifically, if we want to talk about healthcare, the anxiety that is created, the trauma that is created, you know, people in areas disproportionately impacted suffer a great deal of mental anguish, emotional anguish because of this incarceration of brown people because of cannabis consumption or distribution, just have possession, whatever you want to call it, but those are the effects that I see on a regular basis.
Absolutely. Thank you for that answer. Barry, would you like to add on to how the criminalization of cannabis has disproportionately impacted Black communities?
Yeah, just to kind of reiterate and to piggyback off what Dr. Brown was saying, when it comes to the criminalization of Black and Brown communities in the essence of cannabis, you know, we have seen over decades that a lot of the incarcerations when it comes to Black and brown males, when it comes to the fact of they're getting longer sentences because of marijuana use or selling and things like that. It has really caused a major problem in our community when it comes to that, having the lack of males around to be able to, you know, help sustain the family. When it comes to the fact of education, a lot of the people who are incarcerated are young adults and teens that are get incarcerated at a younger age. So then they're not able to finish or complete their education in a high school way. And also the thing when it comes to the healthcare perspective, it's just pretty much it's a holistic problem when it comes to how cannabis has really affected the Black and brown communities. And there's been a long time when those situations has been overlooked. And at this time, it seems to be since that now that cannabis has become at the forefront of being legal in certain states, and it's okay to do it as a dispensary, or even when it comes to the fact of creating businesses so that it can help medically, it still doesn't help those that's already been incarcerated and having sentences because of the sale of it and the use of it, and just the whole breakdown of the family when it came to the fact of drugs related, whether it's cannabis or something even more escalated than that. And I just think the primary focus now needs to be more of education of the cannabis, use of it, education when it comes to businesses and being entrepreneur of it, and just a holistic education around making people aware of the effects that it has done in the community, as well as what are some of the solutions that needs to take place to either to help rebuild and to help, enhance and prevent a lot of the stuff that has taken place before when it comes to the criminalization, of Black and brown communities.
Absolutely. Robin, would you like to add on to that?
Yes, I echo what my colleagues have said, but more importantly, I look at this through the lens of the social determinants of health, okay, and how it impacts Black and brown communities, which is significant because if you don't have your essential needs met, it causes problems with the incarceration of a parent. It causes adverse childhood experiences, which are ACE, which, of course, goes along with trauma. And the Black communities, as well brown communities, more so Blacks, has a long-standing history of trauma. So that's really significant. And when you look at it through the lens of the social determinants of health, it impacts, the social aspect from housing, employment, education, healthcare. Every aspect is touched. And it also, as they mentioned, impacts the family, whether, as a whole, whether it's a two-family, a traditional nuclear families, or non-nuclear family, as well as single parent family. Let's say if it's a single family, parent family, and the parent is incarcerated, then who is left to take care of the child if there's children involved? So it is far-reaching. It is multifaceted, and it touches every area in terms of the social aspects of people and their lives.
Absolutely.
And I also want to kind of piggyback on that, because that's an excellent point that was just made that needs to be a little bit more reiterated when it comes to about the family and the criminalization of Black communities and brown communities. When it comes to criminalization, we also, we're talking about criminalization when it comes to the aspect of incarceration, but also the criminalization and the demonization of those communities when it comes to the stigma that is put upon those communities because of stuff like the arresting and how media portrays those communities when it comes to the area of crime and things like that, and how the treatment within the justice system is different for Black and brown people who are in the system versus people who are not in those communities. And that is something that really needs to take a great look at, because of the fact that because of those injustices and those differences that the justice system plays, that creates a whole nother problem and issues within the residents and the people who are left there and the families and all that. So I just wanted to say that point as well.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Can I just add one last thing? With regard to stigma, stigma is interesting because you have stigma that comes that's external from other communities and from other folks looking into Black and Brown communities, but you also have the stigma that lives inside of Black and Brown communities.
Right.
You know, particularly when I decided to pivot into cannabis, I got a huge blowback from my family because I mean, it was incredible. It was a, how could you do this? Your children are going to be affected. People didn't speak to me for a number of years. It wasn't until I was appointed to the Massachusetts Cannabis Social Equity Advisory Fund Board by the governor that, you know, folks began to talk to me again. It gave legitimacy to the work that I was doing. And it opened dialogue, but there is a huge stigma within Black and Brown communities against each other that the criminal justice system has inflicted upon our community. So it's not just external, it's internal because families have had to live through incredible loss and trauma. There's this idea that if you even speak the word, something horrible is going to happen to you and your family. So that is a great point that you bring up, Barry. And I just wanted to reiterate that with, you know, a little personal anecdote that I experienced, you know, with regard to stigma.
Absolutely. Thank you for
May I
sharing that.
add to that, please?
Uh,
In terms of, if you don't mind, in terms of it, we have a long-standing history in terms of our own internal stigmas in terms of the Black community, and how you're perceived, okay? And that that can be taken a whole nother direction. But the thing about it is that we're here now, and there's stigma associated with it, in terms of the incarceration, in terms of children and family members dealing with uh, loved ones that are incarcerated, or even the mere fact once someone, if they're simply charged and convicted and they have that on their record, not being able to get employment, not being able to support their families
Right.
and things like that, and trying to move on past that, and just trying to, you know, to partake in opportunities. So it's so multifaceted, you know, this particular area. We can go on and just that. I'm going to stop there.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. To piggyback off of what you guys said, why do you think it's important to include Black and Brown communities within policymaking in cannabis law? We know that there's a lot of states now that at a federal level it's still not recognized, but certain states, for example, New Jersey, we talked about Mika before as well, how certain states are more open and progressive towards cannabis law. Why do you think it's important to have diverse voices within policymaking to reduce these incarceration rates, to reduce the social stigma around cannabis? Robin, if you would like to start the conversation.
Okay, so with that, I think New Jersey is very interesting because, as I said, the state under the leadership of Governor Murphy has been very intentional in terms of the legalization of recreational marijuana, the decriminalization of it, the programs that they put in place, even most recently for the owners of cannabis businesses. He reversed the 280E tax just recently on May 8th. He did that. So created, you know, with the social equity program, they have funding upwards of $10 million where applicants can apply. Whereas, you know, I believe it's 60% for social equity applicants, 40% for the remainders, but overall 5% of that for communities that are impacted and have been impacted by the war on drugs. Okay, and which I gave you a link for the New Jersey website. They lay it out because with the map in the counties and state of New Jersey, where the where the greater impact has been in terms of the war on drugs, where there's where the social inequity has occurred because the criminalization of marijuana or cannabis. So New Jersey is being very progressive and intentional with how they're setting up the laws and the regulations that evolve around the cannabis industry. Although you still have some New Jerseyans that are saying it's still not enough, that are especially Blacks that are trying to enter the industry.
Absolutely, thank you. Mika, would you like to add on to why it's important to have diverse voices within policymaking?
Well, for me, the people who have experienced the most harm should be the people at the front of the line. As I said earlier, cannabis was used as a tool intentionally to affect Black and Brown communities. So those are the people that should have the opportunity to take advantage of the billion-dollar industry that we are looking at right now. What I will say though, being in a state that has put social equity and created a robust social equity plan that is still hindered by federal legalization. And the hindrances is the lack of capital, the lack of access to capital that Black and Brown communities have. Black and Brown communities traditionally have a lack of access to capital in any type of business that they want to get involved in. You add in the fact that this is a highly regulated industry, an industry that requires a high amount of compliance, access to lawyers, not just to create simple documents and help you file an LLC, but to help you file an application that in some states could be 75 pages long. So there's a lack of access to capital. There's a lack of access to network. You need lawyers, you need accountants that understand 280E specifically. You need accountants that understand your state's laws with regard to, as Robin just said, New Jersey just enacted a law that allows you to deduct your 280E, what your 280E taxes would be at the state level. Massachusetts has done the same. But I feel as though if folks are not able to get in the game from the outset, whether or not they have a special designation of being social equity, then it doesn't matter, right? One of the things that I do on the Massachusetts Cannabis Advisory Fund Board is we are creating laws and regulations to help people with grants and low interest loans so that they can gain some access to capital, so that they will be able to start these businesses. But the application process is arduous. I have worked with some businesses where it's taken them 3 years to get open, from inception to open. And they've been paying rent on businesses for 3 years. Who in the world that you know that comes from an area disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs has money and access to capital that will allow them to sit on a property and pay what we call the green tax on a property for 3 years, unless they own it, unless by God, by some chance, they own a piece of property and they can build a business. So I think social equity is amazing, but without the descheduling of cannabis and federal legalization, it's a lot of talk and no action. We only have 30 businesses out of almost 1,000 licensed businesses in Massachusetts that are owned by people of color or folks that have been designated EE, which is economic empowerment, or social equity, or minority. What we do see is we see a lot of non-brown people who fall into certain categories taking advantage of the social equity clauses and opening businesses because they happen to be a woman or they were formerly incarcerated. So we have to be careful with social equity. We have to be very intentional about how we write laws around social equity, and we need to create access to capital. That part is very important and very necessary.
Absolutely, thank you.
May
Barry,
I-
would you like
Oh,
to, Robin, would you like to add onto something?
yes, exactly. Yeah, it is true. You know what? If you, again, looking at this through the social determinant of health lens, even if you remove the word cannabis out of this conversation, it's still we're behind. Okay, we are simply behind because of the structural and systemic processes and policies and things like that that have been put in place. So we're already operating at a deficit, as Mika alluded to. But capital is very, very important, because without capital, you can't do anything. You have to have that in order to move forward. And as I said, in New Jersey, what they did is, with some of the programs, with the social equity program, you can get upwards of $250,000. But that can, as Mika said, it can spend very quickly, depending upon which direction you want to go in terms of the area of cannabis. Whether you want to be a cultivator, whatever it is that you want to do, medicinal, whatever, it can go anywhere from, let's say $10,000 up to like $10 million to get going. So capital is very, very important, and we need to be creative in how to acquire that. And the other side of it is looking at it from a different lens. Can you come up with something, an alternative route that's related to the cannabis industry, but where your hands is not directly on cannabis, to create a space in the cannabis industry?
Absolutely, thank you for adding on to that. Barry, would you like to add to the conversation? Why do you think
Well, I just want to add that, and as we all know, that representation is very important. And having someone who is part of, who looks like the people and things, who are affected by the most by that, very important to have at the table for many reasons. One, because of the fact that they make you bring a certain understanding when it comes to creating policies and procedures and things like that around, that could be a very helpful and very advantageous to those communities, as well as the people who are being affected by it. And we know, as I'm a grants and contracts person, and that being aware of what's out there when it comes to regulations and funding and things like that is very important. And you won't know if you're not at the table, if you're not in those conversations, if you're not the person who's making the difference in the implementation of policies and procedures and things like that, or just being the voice of the people who cannot be a voice in that arena. So it's very important to have a diverse voice when it comes to anything that's affecting, the Black and brown communities, especially in the area of what we're discussing tonight, the cannabis thing, and making sure that there are opportunities that are making people aware of what's out there, how the process is done, making people aware on what type of funding that they can acquire for to become an entrepreneur in the business. Just the whole thing of educating them about the process. Like I said, it's a lot of stigmas out there. There's a lot of misinformation and things like that. But you won't be able to know if you don't have people that looks like you, that's at the table and representing you and representing those communities to make that difference like that. So.
Absolutely, thank you for adding on to that. Mika, you talked about social equity programs. just to add on to that, how successful or how helpful do you think in the cannabis industry and criminalization of Black communities, how successful and helpful do you think social equity programs will be?
That's a big one. So since cannabis has been legalized state by state, we have seen California fumble. We've seen Colorado fumble. Massachusetts is still stumbling, and I'm speaking specifically about mature markets at the moment. We've recently seen New York attempt to roll out a program that those of us that have been observers could tell them off the bat wasn't going to work because of New York's pivotal role in the legacy market and their approach to transitioning the legacy market into cannabis. This is nuanced, right? And there's a part of me, I'm of two minds. There's a part of me that is like, we can make this work. And there's a part of me that's like, this country can't figure out how to feed poor people. How are we going to figure out how to dispense money to Black and brown people to start businesses within the cannabis industry with so much stigma, which with a heavy, the stigma was created and designed. This is not something that kind of evolved on its own. Reefer madness was a term that was used deliberately to cause havoc in these communities. So how do we begin to unwind that before we can even move into a space where we could say collectively, we're going to let Black and brown people cut the line? First of all, that's not a capitalist concept. That's socialism. And you know how that works in America. It doesn't. So I think we have to begin to have a larger conversation around destigmatization, around the real harms that were created by the war on drugs and why Black and brown people specifically were targeted, the harm that it created, and what we need to fix it. We have a lot of folks creating equity programs who know nothing about equity, who think that, well, you know, if we just allow folks a period of time to go first, then that's enough. I think we have to be very intentional. And as Barry said earlier, we have to have folks in the room sitting at the table who have direct connections to areas disproportionately impacted. If you don't live there, then you can't really speak to the inequality. I'm born and raised in Boston, in Roxbury, and I lead with that when I have conversations because I went to college in Wellesley, Massachusetts, and then in Newton, Massachusetts, probably two of the Beverly Hills of Massachusetts. And then I went back home and I have lived there ever since. I live currently, well, not technically, but I live currently where I grew up. And I have no plans on leaving because I need to speak for the people in those communities. That is the type of representation that we need. We need people I grew up through the crack epidemic. I walked to school through it. I survived it. My family survived it. Can't say that for everyone that I grew up with. We need people who can speak to that, to be at the table. Whether or not they have multiple degrees and letters next to their name, we need those people to speak to the harm that over incarceration and over policing and the allowance of drugs to just flood into our neighborhood. And we also need people that can honestly speak to what cannabis is and what cannabis isn't and why it should not be in the same category. So until we begin to and that's a lot. I just said a whole lot of different things, but they're all together. Cannabis is incredibly nuanced. And we have a lot of folks who just want to come into the industry to make money. But my dear, we cannot just come into the industry and make money. We have to fix this. This is very, very important that we get this right. And so far, I'm gonna give us a C minus. Because there's been a lot of effort. A lot of effort has been put in, but without any understanding really of the harm and the continued harm and how it moves generation through generation.
Absolutely. Thank you for that answer. Barry, would you like to add why social equity programs, whether they're helpful in the long run or have there been any previous social equity programs that you think have been successful in the past?
When it comes to social program, you're gonna always have some that starts off very good, and then somehow they either dwindle out and fizzle out, and then they come in to communities and they make a great first impression impact, but the sustainability of those programs a lot of time is really the thing that happens. When it comes to just specific a specific social equity program, like I said, you've had different programs that comes in that deals with some type of prevention, whether it is a behavioral prevention program, whether it has something to do with crime prevention, or drug prevention, and things like that. And I myself had also have done some community programs in the past, and a lot of times those programs do not sustain or do not do follow up when it comes to the thing of what is important to keep those communities moving forward and keeping it on positive things, whether it's become where it's just lack of money, funds. The program starts off and then funds runs out. And when the funds runs out, they run out. Or it's the fact that there's certain stigmas about certain communities shy people away from wanting to get involved into those communities to make a difference. Even just within the community itself, once that the people they start getting familiar with those programs and those programs leave abruptly, that sort of leave a sort of bad taste in the residents and community members mouth, so to speak, because now it's another letdown that, okay, here's someone here, they say they want to help, but they don't stay around, to really help. And so, it has to change the narrative of how people present themselves within those communities when it comes to social equity programs, and the whole thing of understanding and making people understand what are social equity programs, how the awareness of it, who can get involved in it, what's need to be done, and what impact that it can really truly make if it sustains. Whether it has to be a sustainability thing and not just a fly by night situation, because there's been a lot of those, and we see that we go back to starting back at one of what to do, and then we have to start all over again. So
Absolutely. Thank you for that answer. Robin, would you like to add on to that?
Yes, I as Barry pointed out, and Amika, sustainability is key, and that's the problem with most of the social equity programs. And let me just put it out there: the social equity program, in terms of the New Jersey with the pilot, is a pilot program that they just started. Now, whether or not that's sustainable, where it's going to go, I don't know. But it seems from the historical context, they have not been successful, which is why, in terms of capital, we have to look at, in terms of the Black cooperative, on how we can raise capital collectively. You have to do it in solidarity. You cannot work in silos at all. Okay, so the social equity programs, that's one aspect of a multifaceted area. Okay, that's just one aspect. You have to look at other areas as well in terms of investors. It's important as Barry said, of connecting, networking, and who you know, and working with who you know. So, for example, in Trenton, New Jersey, I'm not sure if you all are familiar with Wanda James. Wanda James was the first Black woman to own a medical dispensary in Colorado, which is called Simply Pure. Uh, with her, with her input, two young men in the city of Trenton have been able to start their businesses, Simply Pure Trenton and Simply Pure Downtown Trenton. And so they're operating on under almost like the franchise um, um, arena. Okay, so that's that. So again, you can't just look at it through the lens. Social equity is there and it's important, and but is it sustainable, especially for the amount of capital that's needed to get up and going? And again, dependent on where and what direction you want to be in the cannabis industry.
Can I just add to that really quickly? I just have one comment. Two really quick comments. What we did here in Massachusetts is we tied our social equity fund to our taxes. So a percentage of the excise tax that is collected at the state level is used to fund our social equity fund. We also have tied social equity to every cannabis business, whether you are social equity EE, minority or not. You have to have a social impact plan tied to your business. So you have to either give back in service or in kind to an area disproportionately impacted. I will say that some people have gotten away with shenanigans. There has been some folks who are donating to animal hospitals, and I'm just like, that's not an economic impact. But that is how our state has actualized funds to maintain our program. A lot of the problems is states have said, okay, we're going to have social equity and people can donate. If you don't mandate it, then they're not going to do it. Secondly, the other thing that I would like to encourage folks is do not be discouraged by everything that we're saying here. Ancillary businesses that traditionally provide to the cannabis industry, which is accounting services, HR services. We need folks to clean, we need security, we need all of the things that every other type of business needs. We need those things. Those are called ancillary businesses. Some of them require learning a specific skill set, specifically like accountants need to know 280E in order to practice. But some of them don't. Some of them don't require you to learn any new skill. So I tell folks the best social equity that you can do is tell your friends who happen to be Black and brown how they can use the skill sets that they already have or the businesses that they already have to service the cannabis industry, because we need a lot of help. We need a lot of help. We need access to people there's a lot of scammers out there. So we need access to good businesses. So if you have a good business and you think there could be a good fit, or you have a question about how your business could fit, reach out. I'll show you, I'll explain to you, or start going to all of the cannabis events in your state, and you will begin to see how that works for you.
Absolutely, thank you. Barry,
Yes.
would you,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Robin, do you want to say something?
No, I echo what Mika said, because it's very important that you do look at the other services and what else can you do. Like I said, where your hands are not necessarily on actual cannabis, okay? That gives you more room to leverage yourself in terms of, and probably not as much cost to start up a business, So I think that's very important. And I also think when it comes down to it, whenever you're running any type of program, there has to be transparency as well as accountability. So who are the overseers? okay? And usually there should be a community, at least my lens, a community advisory board or something that's in place of that nature that is overseeing what's going on.
Absolutely. Barry, would you like to add on to that?
Well, I just want to add on that, everything that's been said is really very important, and it's the key to any successful business. Networking is really the thing that's going to have to be also pushed when it comes to the cannabis businesses and people getting involved. And like Mika stated earlier, changing the stigma of what cannabis is when it comes to the business versus the selling and the using of it. And I think that's one of the things that would get people more at ease on becoming networking and partnering cannabis business if they understand that there are differences between those and not just clump it all together and label it as in some type of demonizing form, but look at the advantages and the opportunities that that type of business could provide for the community, as well as someone else to become an entrepreneur in it. So
Absolutely. And to piggyback off of what you said, we talked about this lack of representation within the cannabis industry, and there being a few corporate conglomerates, particularly dominated by white men, who own a large chunk of the cannabis industry. How do we make it possible for Black cooperatives, Black businesses to learn more about cannabis, the cannabis industry, and also promote the education within the cannabis industry? Because a lot of these businesses are not aware, or they're being taken over by other larger conglomerates. Robin, what do you think is a good way to raise awareness and to increase more diversity within the cannabis industry?
Did you ask me? Did you speak to me? Did you say Robin? Yes. Oh, so exactly. You definitely have to be businesses that are established. Small businesses must be cognizant and aware of predatory businesses that dominate. They're looking to buy them up. So when you get into this business or any business, you have to immerse yourself so that you are knowledgeable, and you need to gain as much knowledge as you possibly can. Networking, connecting yourself with the people that's within your circle that are trustworthy. That's very important as well when you're out here doing these things. And you have to understand, it's almost as though it's done by design, with most of the businesses being owned, dominant business being owned, they're multi-state owners. They have their teams, they come in there, they're very focused in terms of getting the licenses and everything that they need. It's important that, as Mika said, that you tie something to them having to give back, and then oversight and to make sure that they are giving back and hold them accountable to do exactly that. Okay. And again, like I said, even if you remove cannabis out of the equation, these are the same problems that unfortunately, for lack of a better term, plague the Black and brown communities, in terms of a lack of opportunity, inequity, and so forth. So how do you get someone to buy in? And then if someone is to go to them in terms of for investing, or going to them to learn, as a bartender, to begin to learn the business or whatever have you, what does that look like? How much do you have to give up in order to enter the business to gain access?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Barry, would you like to add on to that?
just pretty much just to piggyback on, I think that just the networking of it, the aspect and to making sure that you have people aware of the opportunities that's out there. So if that has to go through some type of small business incubator or some type of chamber of commerce meeting, or just awareness within some networking events where people can go and attend meetings or certain trainings on how to become a cannabis owner, or whatever information that could be out there, helpful to get them involved, to make them aware of what's out there, what type of funding that's out there for them to pursue. Just get them more information. I think that's one of the, because it's a lot of it, people don't know a lot of times that they don't know how to start, they don't know what exists out there for them to start, and they don't know the opportunities and how to go forward to get it. And if those information and that information is rarely aware of, make them aware of it, then I think you'll have more people involved in understanding the business and how to pursue it.
Absolutely. Mika, would you like to add on to that?
So I'm gonna get a little radical here for a second. I am designated social equity in Massachusetts because we have a program that we send people through that is supposed to prep people for opening a cannabis business in Massachusetts. I have been very outspoken in saying that the program is bogus, particularly because most of the people that are in this program are the talented 10th of Black and Brown communities. And that's not a negative thing. But the talented 10th come out of that program still not having a fundamental idea of how to open a cannabis business and sustain a cannabis business and how to raise capital. So fundamentally, that's a problem. If the talented 10th are having a hard time, then how are regular people from areas disproportionately impacted supposed to gain access to the industry? I have a very radical solution. We need to educate. And I know for the folks that are watching this panel, they're like, they all just keep saying education. But that education, I can't stress, is the pivotal piece. And it's pivotal because it's nuanced. So the first thing that has to happen is we have to get to church basements. We have to get to every single place where Black and Brown people are, and at the theater level, at the documentary level, at every possible level we could get to our people in these communities, to explain to them what cannabis is, what it isn't. It's legal now in certain states, what those regulations are and how they affect them in their daily life, right? So consumption, what does consumption look like where you live? Does that, if you live in federally subsidized housing, that does not mean that you can consume. Where are those people going to go to consume? What are possession limits? What are possession limits for medical card holders versus recreational, right? If you get arrested, do you have to pay a fine, right? So just education. Expungement. A lot of these states that have programs now, they all have expungement. Yeah, you can go and get your record unsealed or expunged or sealed or expunged. But people don't know that. They have no idea. There are folks walking around, can't vote, can't get a decent paying job, okay, because they don't know that they can go and have this taken off of their record. I love, everybody's so happy about what President Biden did. That only affected 6,000 people because most people are in jail at the state level. So, I mean, it didn't do that much, right? We need the states to allow people to expunge their records. After expungement, there needs to be job training. We need to have job training and job fairs, okay? At those job fairs, we need to explain to people how their skills that they already have translate into the cannabis industry. If you've been a line cook, you could work in the cannabis industry. If you've run a restaurant or a retail operations, you could work in the cannabis industry. If you know about production and if you've had a science degree and you know how to mix oils and extractions, you could work in the cannabis industry. Those are the conversations that need to be had at the local level. And then once you get job training, then you have to network, and not just at your local level. You got to get on planes, trains, and automobiles, and you got to go traverse across the country. It's a lot of work, but those that's my I don't know how many steps I just listed, but that's my step program on how this happens. Then drop somebody into a program, you know, an entrepreneurship program or a social equity program that trains them on how they're going to get into the industry. But you can't skip all of those steps in ADI communities and say that you're offering social equity to people if you have not done those things. You're just letting people out into the world willy-nilly. I have seen so many people of color leave the industry in the last year, particularly women of color. I have seen them leave the industry because they have not had that training or that mentorship or support in order to proceed when they hit a wall. So it is very important that we just don't grab folks off the corner and say, hey, you want a job, and drop them in. No, we have to train them to understand what this industry is. I had to fire someone once because they did not understand that they could not consume cannabis on the premises of the building that we worked in. You can't do it. And they fundamentally missed that point, right? They supposedly went through training, but they fundamentally missed that point. They did this. It's this idea. Oh, it's okay. Nothing's going to happen. No, the entire company loses its license if you are found to have done that, and I didn't fire you. So it's insanely nuanced, and with something that is this regulated and has to be this compliant, we have to take the time to properly educate everyone who plans to enter in this community or who plans to continue to live their life in the culture of cannabis.
And I also want to say, I want to kind of piggyback on that. Good. And that's very important what Mika just said, because that's really the blueprint of it. And one of the things I think that we also need to also just kind of address, if a person have the desire to become an entrepreneur and to run their business, one of the things that they have to learn also and have to be educated on how to run a business. Whether it's going to be a cannabis business, whether one of the main problems is that a lot of times people don't know how to run a business. Just from step one process of a business, or not only to a specialization of the business, but just how to run a business, what steps they need to take to become a business owner. And I think that is also would be part of their training and education on that, because some people may have the mentality that I can just go out and run a business, it looks easy, but they don't know all of the nuances. They don't know all the steps that needs to be taken, and they need to take as an entrepreneur and business owner in order to have a successful business. So I think within that training of the cannabis, it also needs to be training on on the one-on-one step on how to run a business and how to become a business owner.
Absolutely. Thank you.
May I piggyback on to that, please? I do agree with that. I think, and that's where you come with the Black cooperatives, programs, creating programs and creating these training programs, and the members being able to teach and to educate. Because right now you have businesses out there that consultant businesses and things like that who will provide this information for a fee. And we're already talking about capital. And if you're already at a deficit and you don't have the knowledge, okay, acquiring that knowledge is extremely important. And I think that's where the Black cooperative can truly help. even if you have summer programs for youth, because I believe if somebody's going to enter it, the business, they can start at a certain age in terms of learning a business, even if it's not hands-on, depending upon the state, how old you have to be before you can even work in the cannabis market, if depending upon what you're doing, it's so, like they said, it's so nuanced, it's so multifaceted, it's so many layers. But Black cooperatives can come together and can help. And I think, if you have messaging campaigns to put the targets, the specific community members and things like that, that would be very helpful. But again, that costs money, So a lot of this, the education, some people are willing to do it for free, most are not. So, so
Robin,
that
I do both, not to cut you off, but I do both. I generally take money from MSOs and I figure out how to create programming for people of color. So, I consult in both spaces. I consult MSOs on what they're doing wrong, particularly how to get, how to incorporate social equity in a much better space in their programs. I take that money and flip it, and I'm working on several programs right now to help educate people in the space. Getting back to your original question, which was, we see multi-state operators coming in and buying up everything. That's the nature of capitalism. And as I said, social equity is socialism. We have to get clever. We have to figure out how we get money and what we do with it. This requires huge sacrifice. Like this situation is not just, oh, we're just gonna come in and no, this requires huge levels of sacrifice. And right now what we're seeing is a lot of the first entrants are coming in, they're grabbing their money and they're getting out. A lot of the first entrants, particularly people of color, are coming in, they're not liking what they're seeing and they're not staying, they're leaving. We need some folks that are willing to stand up and put their money where their mouth is so that we can turn around and pull our folks up with us. This is not an easy ride. I hear a lot of, I have a lot of people coming to me like, oh, this is the next best thing since the gold rush. It is not that. It is complicated. And the federal government is leaving us with this 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I very rarely quote Clarence Thomas, but today I'm going to quote him because he's one of the few people who has said that this is not sustainable, having 1 foot in, allowing the states to use their state rights to exercise legalization of cannabis while the federal government still has it prohibited. It sets a very bad precedent that states, 32 to be precise, have decided to decriminalize cannabis in one way, shape, or another, while the federal government lies and waits and does nothing. It creates a very lopsided industry that allows for the proliferation of multi-state operators to come in and do exactly what they are doing. Take advantage of the lack of banking and take advantage of the lack of federal oversight.
Mika, they are the federal government. They're looking into descheduling cannabis. Okay, for many reasons. But again, it goes back to the war on drugs, and it's a process, and we have to go. Unfortunately, we have to go through the process. I agree with you. The main thing is to deschedule it. To wherever they're going to put it at, like alcohol, like tobacco, because if we have that out there, but we're not there yet. Hopefully we get there soon. In the interim, we have to work within the space that is here, and we have to push forward. And partnerships are everything. Partnerships are everything. Networking is everything. And starting as soon as possible. And like you said, educating. and making sure it's with any business that you go into, that's regulated or not regulated. It takes like 5 years or so to turn it around. You're not going to see an immediate profit. You have to be in there for the long run. You have to understand it. You have to know how to write a business plan. You need to understand the who, what, when, where, and why. Why are we doing this? You need to immerse yourself, okay? You have to do the homework. You have to be willing to do the work. And it's not easy. It's simply not easy.
Absolutely, thank you. We talked about how difficult it is to get licensed in business in the cannabis industry, and how that has negatively impacted the Black community and the lack of capital, the lack of access to capital that the Black community has had. Mika, you touched on this a little bit before. What are different ways for people who are watching that they can receive capital, or different areas that they can look into so that it might become easier for the Black community to receive capital in the cannabis industry?
So there are a lot of programs that are starting to emerge. You have to let's say, for instance, Georgia. Georgia recently created their medical marijuana program. Like I say recently, within the last almost 3 weeks, I believe it was 3 or 4 weeks, their program emerged. And I know a lot of people in Georgia who want to be in the cannabis industry. I know a young man who left Georgia, came to Massachusetts, took an entrepreneurship program here, entered into a contest and received capital. So I say all that to say, you have to be very clever. You have to be smart, and you have to make yourself aware of what is going on across the country, not just in your space. If your state is a late adopter, move around and see what's available. If you have a really good idea, work your idea. Figure out how you can get your idea out there. And I'm not telling anybody to do anything illegal. What I'm saying is get your idea in front of as many eyes as you can across the country, because there are so many opportunities. This young man is not looking to have a storefront. He's not looking to have a dispensary or a grow. He creates a product. Creating a product is a much easier way into the industry because there's licensing opportunities. So his capital raise was not as significant as the next person's capital raise. Number two, there are lots of pitch contests across the country. I have seen people move across the country and go all the way to California from Massachusetts to apply for free money. We're talking 50K for some of these cannabis pitch contests to get startup cash. Talk to other people who have existing cannabis businesses. And I'm not talking about your friend. I'm talking about people who have had businesses that have thrived throughout the changes and fluctuations in the industry. Go talk to them. Ask them what they did. Figure out what didn't work for them and how you can make it better. Lower the amount of capital that you need to raise by not making some of the fundamental mistakes that the forebearers have made. There are angel investors out there. There are a lot of folks who quietly want to give money to the cannabis industry. You will find those people at Benzinga, at NECAN, at MJ Biz, at MJ Unpacked. You will find these people in those spaces. One of the ways that I was able to be as successful in the industry in such a short period of time was because I went to everything, everywhere, all the time. I was literally on the bus and the train and planes all the time, going to places just so that I could meet people and make connections. The third thing is you need a kick-ass business plan. And if you don't know how to write a business plan, find someone in your community to help you write your business plan. If you have an amazing product, if you have an amazing grow, someone will invest in you. You just have to do the due diligence and have the stick-wittedness. Like this is something that you just have to like really, really want and push for in order to raise that capital. Lastly, being that I work in the cannabis banking space, banks are starting to lend. Banks across the country are starting to lend to cannabis business. I will say they're still very tepid, but they are starting to lend. So find the cannabis banks that exist in your state or your region, because sometimes, you don't necessarily have to bank with a bank that's in your state. For instance, there are Connecticut banks that are starting to lend to folks in Massachusetts, Maine, and Vermont. So find a bank that has a cannabis banking program. Oftentimes, though, they want to lend to folks who have an existing business, so a business that is up and running. Then they will lend, build that into your capital raise plan, build that into your business plan. That right now I need this type of money, but down the line, I have the opportunity to get that kind of money. There are VCs out there, there's private lending firms that are FundCanna is one to name, that are also doing lending. Be mindful of the type of money that you are taking. Not all money is good money, okay? So be mindful. In the early days of cannabis, I know some folks that took $1 million on 100%, baby. And let me tell you, that was not a good plan for them. So really, really be mindful and intentional about what you're doing. Don't do it alone if you think you can. And really think about what it is that you're selling. Are you selling a service? Are you selling a product? Understand the dynamics of the different types of businesses that are in the cannabis industry. Dispensaries, even though you see so many of them, they have the tightest margin because they are affected the most by 280E. Social consumption spaces also, they are affected largely, and delivery largely by 280E. Not so much in production, not so much in grows, because they can deduct the one cost of goods sold that you can deduct within 280E is your inventory. So for grows, the whole business is inventory with the exception of electronics. But once you get down to dispensary, you have a whole bunch of other cogs that are not inventory. So their margin is hit harder by 280E. That little nugget right there helps you to determine how much capital you need and what type of business you need to go into in the cannabis industry.
Absolutely. Barry, would you like to add to that?
I think that I think Mika had touched on all the elements that that one need to pursue where they need to go, because of the fact that all that's been said is that you have to be aware of what's out there, and you have to know where to pursue it and where to go, and how to educate yourself in order for you to be able to be a successful business owner in the cannabis business, as well as get the necessary training and opportunity that you need, as well as like she made the example of the young man that was from Georgia and came to Massachusetts pursuing his dream. A lot of times you do have to reach out and you have to step out and go to where you need to go to make that dream, make that business happen, and to be able to connect with people and communicate and to and connect with people in order to get that done. So.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hey,
Um,
Emma,
oh,
can
yeah.
you just, what I would like you to do, I just want to pause a minute right here. If you could just pull up the New Jersey CRC website for me, please, and put it on your screen if you could share it.
Sure.
Because I just want to give the listeners and viewers just what it looks like, the fee schedule and everything that's involved, just to put a visual to everything that's being discussed here right now in terms of you know, the application process and all those types of things.
Absolutely. So you said the New Jersey,
This Cannabis Regulation Commission.
okay.
Okay. So this is the New Jersey's Cannabis Regulatory Commission page. If you go up, click on apply for a license. Okay. Just keep going down, and it tells you about the various licensing and things like that. Click on license types, and you could just get an idea in terms of deciding, you know, where you want to go. Can you just and you see they have the CREAM Act, which is 6 classes of license for recreational use, licensed businesses, etc. Just can you move that up a little? Can you bring up the various classes of the under the license types? If you scroll up.
Oh, yeah, scroll, yeah. Nope, scroll
Go
down.
the other way. Scroll down, sorry, scroll down. There you go. Keep going down, right there. Keep going down. So you passed it. Okay. Just scroll down, scroll up a little bit. Scroll up a little bit more, right there. So you see, you have it's 6 classes, and then they have the conditional license, okay? And the conditional license, which is the last one, falls under the social equity, okay? But you have the class 1 for recreational use, class 2 for your manufacturer versus the cultivator, class 3 for the wholesaler, class 4 for the distributor, class 5 for the retailer, class 6 for delivery. And then, like I said, the conditional license. Now, can you scroll down one more time, please? Look at this, click on the fee schedule. Okay. Now, and you see the wide range of the fees right there. Okay. And it changes. That's just the beginning. That's just to get you started. Scroll down again. And this is, keep going, scroll down some more. And you'll see, okay, come scroll up, and you see, and it just go on and on when you get into your licenses. And if you scroll down one more time, keep going, because they talk about square foot, and then they change fee. So if you're going to change your business at any time, scroll down, and you see if you're changing the location and a standard business versus a micro business. I think you have less than 25 employees. The facility change, majority ownership change, all of those. Okay, and this is just to get an idea. Okay, and scroll back up for me, back to the top, please, because they also have a page where uh, let me see, apply for conditional. Go down where they show you for the application process, so you can do a check to see what it is that you need, that you have everything in place. This is the priority. Yeah. So the priority recreational license is for populations that's impacted by the war on drugs, or if they live in a zip code that has been significantly impacted. Okay. It's under apply for a license. But anyway, I just wanted to give an idea of what it's like in terms of applying for the license, and things like that, and all. And then if you will go back and share where we are. Okay, go back to apply for license again, please. Okay, go down. Okay, wait a minute, hold on one second. Application guide, step by step. 10 ways to prepare, submit your application. They have a video, application guide. Go to the application guide, please. Maybe that's it. That's not it. It's more comprehensive. It was just a one page. It's okay. But anyway, you get a general idea of the fees and things like that. We went through it really quickly, so I don't want to take up more time.
Absolutely, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And then since we are getting closer to 7:30, if anybody has any questions, they can add them to the chat. I know we've had a question on social equity cannabis programs in Georgia, and where they can lend energy to in Georgia specifically. If as we keep on going, if there's any questions, I'll make sure to ask them as well. But Robin, as you were mentioning, how we can increase awareness and education on cannabis licensing, becoming a part of the cannabis industry, but also raising awareness around cannabis in general. How can we promote education and awareness in the Black community around cannabis, joining the cannabis industry, and also making sure that people are using cannabis in a safe and accessible manner? Robin, would you like to add to that question?
Mm-hmm. Okay, yes, okay. So now, again, it's messaging, okay, is very, very important, okay? And making sure that, you know, the class act is followed with that, and culturally, linguistically appropriate services and that. And then being that I'm a nurse practitioner, of course, when you're speaking to people who are using cannabis, now understand that despite recreational marijuana being legal, there's still a robust Black market. And within that Black market, because not everybody, I don't know, what the prices are when you go to the dispensaries versus what you do in the Black market. But a lot of people are still purchasing from the Black market. And with the Black market, they have to be cognizant of possibly being laced with fentanyl or meth. Okay. So I think it was in 2021 and 2021, more Native Americans and Blacks died of overdose due to fentanyl um, uh, than ever before. Okay, so you know you have to talk about that. You have to talk about people are using edibles, okay, and the effects of that, that it can be delayed and to use widely. How to store, okay, edibles and those types of things, okay, um, for folks, because a lot of times, you know, people may say to you know, that they're in pain or whatever have you, and perhaps, you know, grandchildren, children, whatever may be using, and they say, oh, well, I have something, you know, maybe you should try this here, okay? And if they're naive to marijuana or cannabis rather, you know, you have to be mindful, especially if it's interacting with other medication, because with cannabis has the psychoactive aspect of it, okay, in terms of the whereas the CBD does not. It does not. It's very low in terms of the THC, and it does can impact you know, the brain, and especially in the adolescent populations, you want to be mindful of it because, and you know, they say that religion says that the brain does not mature until right around age 24, 25. And so anything that that is used, such as cannabis, can alter or impact uh, how the brain is going to function. And there's still, this is all still unfolding. They're still researching this. They're still learning about it. Okay. So, you know, to be mindful of if they're using from the Black market, to know who they are purchasing from, and if they are if they're getting it from the dispensary and it's recreational, of course that's there. They're going to go over it with the educational aspect of it, and what they're looking for, whether it's for anxiety or just for relaxation or pain, whatever it is, all of that would be reviewed. But that's the main thing, because like I said, the black market is still robust. But cannabis is used to control pains, is for in cancer, for nausea, for epilepsy, is for Tourette syndrome, for autism, um, uh, to help with acting out and to keep them people living with it calmer, especially their children, and just those types of things. Okay.
Barry, would you like to add on to how we can raise awareness on the safe use of cannabis? Mika, would you like to add on to that?
Absolutely. One of the things that I do, and Robin is correct, currently we have the legacy market. We've only captured, and this is a generous number, we've only captured about 17% of the legacy market. What that means is 17% of people who generally buy their cannabis from the street have transitioned into the industry. So there are a whole lot of people out there who are still purchasing their cannabis from the street or are not participating. One of the reasons why I got into cannabis, the cannabis industry, is my Nana's knees. Really simple. She's someone who has had 4 knee surgeries. She's a little woman. She's about 110 pounds, and she's had about 4 knee surgeries. And the opiates that they give her, she doesn't like them. She doesn't want to take them. And so she lives in a lot of pain. And as I said before, I make body butters and skin topicals. And so I decided I wanted to learn how to get cannabis into the topical because I thought that that would be helpful for her. So I started with CBD, and lo and behold, it worked. And I brought it to her one weekend before I went to New York. And I told her, just put it on your knees before you go to bed and tell me what happens. Well, she put it on her knees, and then somehow she decided she was going to put it on her entire body. So she put it on head to toe, and she said she laid down and she didn't wake up for almost 8.5 hours. And she called me and she said, I don't know what you did, but that stuff made me high. And you told me it wasn't going to make me high. And I said, Nana, topicals cannot make you intoxicated. I said, and I use CBD. I did not use THC. And she said, I don't know what any of that means, but I was high. And I said, Nana, you couldn't. It's not possible. And what my grandmother didn't realize is that was the first time that she got a restful night's sleep in probably 40 years. And that is what happens when you are at what we call equilibrium, at what we call, oh my God, I can't think of it right now. But that is what happens when your body is not stressed, when it's not experiencing trauma, when you are fully relaxed. You have what's called a natural high, and you experience euphoria. And she experienced such euphoria that it knocked her. She said the TV was on, the lights were on. She never, she just knocked out. And she said it was amazing for her. But what she didn't understand is after a while, she was going to need to get something stronger and stronger because her body was building tolerance. So now I'm trying to dose her with CBD, and she won't take it. She won't take it. She's afraid. She's like, no, I just rub the stuff on, and I take a Tylenol and a this and a that, and I'm okay. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I'm scared. And that really bothers me, that there is medicine available for our elders, particularly our elders, that they are scared to take. So I echo again the call for dramatic education for our communities of color and particularly our elders, because our elders are the ones that are experiencing high amounts of pain. Baby boomers are consume so much opiates to manage pain. And it's astonishing to me. And these little topicals that I make, they work, but I feel as though we could really educate them on how we could take it a step further for them and begin to eliminate the opiate use. We could really eliminate a lot of opiate use across all ages and categories and races by introducing people to the power of cannabis and what it does and what it does not do. But I also echo Robin in saying that we need conscientious training to teach people how to not consume a whole bag of edibles on their first time using cannabis. Don't go to the airport after you've taken cannabis for the first time. Like all these really ridiculous stories that people come to me and they tell me, and they're afraid to use it again. It's because people are not informed. I often tell people, don't just give somebody an edible without education. Don't just give somebody a joint without education. You have oh, nothing's going to happen to you. I use this all the time and I go and I walk my dog. Well, you know what? Your friend took the joint and smoked it and went and walked their dog and didn't come home or fell or had an accident. So we have to be very, very careful and very intentional in our training and educating, particularly our elders, because they are very vulnerable, as is our young population. They are also very, very vulnerable. But there needs to be meaningful conversation and meaningful conversation around constituents. Cannabis is not just the psychoactive part. We have so many other constituents that are found in the plant, particularly terpenes, which are the reason why you have the effects and the types of high that you have. So we need to have conversations about the whole plant and nothing but the plant. So help me God.
And just to piggyback on what you said, Nika, it's everyone that uses. You have the various populations that are using it in terms of the age groups, okay? But everybody it needs to be clear messaging for everyone across the lifespan, okay? When you're going to educate, and like you said, I think a major thing is using it um, if you're operating any type of equipment, if you're driving or any of those here types of things, because if it's your first time, you don't know how it's going to affect you, and for some, especially the edibles, it's a delayed effect, and people, I've had people who, were crying hysterically because they didn't understand what was going on to them after they had something. They thought that they were okay, and then it hit, and they're like, I don't know if I'm hallucinating or what. So education is very, very important. But again, I'm going to defer to the work that Black cooperatives can do around this topic. And I think there's vast need and there's vast work that can be done if we build in solidarity and put our efforts together to lift each other up. And also, as someone said, research. But the only thing, research is very, very challenging because it is still a Schedule 1. And as long as it's a Schedule 1, the funding lacks. You're talking about a stringent process to try to even conduct research. It's better than what it was, but there's still a whole exponential amount that needs to be done.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. To sort of wrap up the conversation, we're talking about Black cooperatives and small businesses. How will Black cooperatives within the cannabis industry, how will that facilitate wealth creation within the Black community? What are specific ways we can help the Black community in wealth creation? since there's the cannabis industry is a large potential industry, how do we raise awareness among people? How do we let them know that this is a possibility? We talked about social stigma. It's just sort of tying that all up. How do we help the Black community raise wealth, particularly in the cannabis industry? Barry, would you like to start?
Yeah. Well, one way, and this is kind of piggyback off the last question of thing, is to create an atmosphere and awareness of the positives of having a cannabis business and what positives that this bring. You know, a lot of it's the stigma and the fear factor that sort of shy people away from when you talk about anything about cannabis and things on that note. So how can those businesses pretty much enhance or become a benefit to the community to create more wealth in the Black and brown communities is one through education, uh, being aware of what funding opportunities and things that's out there that they could bring to the community that could also people can network with to build their community up and to build wealth, whether it's through entrepreneurship or through other educational type things that would help enhance people to gain access to income, and also to if you're going to have one of the main things that I feel, if you create a cannabis business within those communities, that the money stay in that community. Uh, One of the things that a lot of times when you have businesses that comes into the Black and brown communities, they the Black and brown community, uh, you know, they shop at those places, they spend money there and things, but the money goes into the business and goes out from the business out of the community. It doesn't stay in the community. It doesn't do anything to help the community, and the community does not benefit anything from it. So if the cannabis business is going to do one thing to help sustain wealth or create wealth within the Black community, then the monies have to stay within the confines of that community, and have to be brought back into the community to enhance the community, not take from the people in the community to take it to some other community to benefit, but make it so it can stay inside the community. And that's one of the main things that I see that will be very beneficial when it comes to wealth and equity for Black communities.
Absolutely. Robin, would you like to add on to that?
Yeah, I think it's very important that with the Black communities that so many, especially in I'm going to speak to like the urban environments, right? Um, there's a lack of ownership, home ownership of businesses, mom and pop stores, and those types of things. So I think that's very important to have programs in place where and also have community members organized whereby if they're going to where they meet with their elected officials at the municipal and the state level, okay, um, let their voices be heard and for them to envision what they want their communities to look like, okay? This is going to take some planning, it's going to take some work because they know what their communities are like, as opposed to letting investors come in, purchase up a bunch of properties, where there's slumlords and all those types of things. All of that goes around it because within a community, they could say, okay, well, we want a dispensary or we want a cannabis business, that's there. Okay, we want everything. We want to lift our community up, our children up, our everything from across every aspect. And yes, it starts with education. It starts with youth. You have to get everyone involved. Not only you have to get the elders, you have to get the middle, and you have to even get the youth at a certain age involved. Okay, because it has to be a community effort in order for the voices to be heard and recognized. And you cannot let up. You cannot let up. Your voices need to be heard, and they need to be diligent about what it is that they want. Okay. And I think a major thing is raising awareness on exactly what a cooperative, what a Black cooperative is, and the history of it, where it comes from, where it stems from, and how, you know, transitioning from the slave to freed, and how the cooperatives were used to lift up communities, you know, and specifically I think of the what happened in Oklahoma, how the Black Wall Street, so to speak, was built through cooperative efforts back then. Okay, that can be replicated again today, but you have to educate and re-educate, because a lot of that history has been lost throughout the decades and the generations. So I just think that right there, I'm gonna leave it right there.
Okay, thank you for that. Amika, would you like to add on to anything?
Yes, I have kind of a unique spin on this, being that I work in banking and in the cannabis industry. One of the ways in which we think that we can begin to see true equity in Black and Brown communities is by engaging minority depository institutions. Currently, they participate in the cannabis industry. They don't have banking programs. So what I would like to see is the community urging minority depository institutions to begin to bank cannabis, and to exclusively bank social equity. I think that that is an opportunity for not just generational wealth, but community wealth. That is how we begin to see communities like mine in Boston move away from that $8 wealth gap from the rest of the city and the rest of the state, is by engaging lending to cannabis businesses directly in the community. It also creates direct access. Oftentimes in ADIs, folks have to leave their community to go to a dispensary and purchase. There are whole municipalities and counties in California where there is no cannabis, and folks have to drive oftentimes 2 hours to a dispensary outside of their community, where they are spending their dollars in a community that doesn't look like them. Well, they're never going to see that money. That money's not going to come back. So one of the things that I would urge folks is minority depository institutions, and I think they're called community development financial institutions, CDFIs. Those are the two types of financial institutions that traditionally lend to co-ops and small businesses in Black and Brown communities. We need to see them step into the cannabis industry and to begin banking by providing products and services, but also lending. And you know, there are agencies that will help them to build that cannabis program.
Thank you so much. If we have any other questions in the chat, feel free to add them. If we don't, thank you everybody for being here tonight. We really had a very productive conversation, and we're looking forward to seeing you guys in our future webinars as well and conversations. Thank you everybody for being here tonight, and have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions? Any of the panelists have any questions? Anything want to be said?
I don't see any, but thank
See
you so
anything?
much.
Was it okay?